This tape is the second tape of the Homer Lucas interview recorded at the Marshall County Library on June 28, 1978, by John Marshall and Barbara Searles for the Kentucky Oral History Commission.
Got me something here now, but I was the old man shadow from then on, because later on I found out why that they all run out. Old man Bill McCullum had killed 8 people. One of them was a woman, and that was the last one that he killed. And this was told to me by a man that was a friend of Bill McCullum at that time. He said he had killed this woman's husband in the drunken brawl over there. He had tried to shoot him, and he had killed the man. And the woman had been after him for a long time. And she finally called him up and told him, said, "I want to apologize to you for being mad at me, and I want to meet you at the graveyard at my husband's grave." He said, "I want to apologize to you." And old man Bill McCullum said, "I'll be out there, lady." And said he walked out to the graveyard, which is there in town, and said the lady stood up behind the tombstone with a shotgun, and he shot her right between the eyes. She just fell dead over the tombstone.
That was in Central City?
No, this was over at Catawba.
Catawba?
Yeah.
But his fame had spread to Central City, huh? They knew about him.
Oh, yeah, they knew. All this thing spread all over the country. I just didn't know about the old man. I just hadn't heard about the old man.
Well, what were some of the difficulties that you encountered when you were a law officer here in Benton in the early days, in Marshall County in the early days?
Oh, boys had come from out here in the country and the horse and buggy. This was the early days. The horse and buggy and bring hard cider with them. And they'd all get drunk and holler and hoop. All they do, we never arrested nobody, put him in jail or nothing like that. We used to go to them and try to get them stopped. And so we had, remember one fellow that could hiccup. That sounds sort of silly, but and he'd get about half drunk on his hard cider, and he'd come to town, and you could hear him hiccup a half a block or more. Now this can be authenticated by the executive director of the Bank of Benton over here. He was one of the gentlemen that was in the bunch.
Well, what's his name?
His name is Cone, Charlie Cone.
What other problems did you have besides?
Very seldom ended the problem. We had one time when Lewis Lilly was sheriff, Homer Raven was the judge, and Homer had a boy named Charlie, and there's a boy here named Rash Washington, and they got into a fight somewhere out in the country, and drunk, of course, drinking, and one would try to say he could whoop the other one. Well, they couldn't agree, and neither one could whoop the other one. They just too equally divided, and so they started a fight down on the corner of what was known then as John Peterson's store, and Lewis Lilly and me were sitting in the courthouse window. We had, great big windows that you could sit in them at that time. And Lewis, we saw the fight, and Lewis said, I was deputy sheriff under him at that time. He said, "Now, Homer," said, "I just can't go down there." He said, "You got to go get him." I said, "All right." And I didn't carry no gun. It wasn't necessary to carry a gun. I went down and I told the boy, I said, "All right, boys, come on, you both of you under arrest." And Charlie spoke up and said, "Well, I want to hit him one more time." I said, "No, you ain't going to hit him." And both of them was bloody. Nose was bleeding, both of them. We took them up to the jailhouse. Judge Reverend was county judge, as I said before, and so he said, "Now, boy," says, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He said, I'm going to put you both in jail, and when you sober up, you can go home." And that's what he done. They went down and washed up. When he got sobered, he wouldn't turn them loose because he knew if they did, well, they'd go right on back, go to drinking again.
Mm. Now, who was fighting? Charlie Cohn?
No, Charlie Rayburn.
Charlie Rayburn.
Charlie Rayburn, Judge Rayburn's son.
Yeah.
And Ras Washam, they all call him Rastus. I don't know what the actual name was, but we all just knew him as Ras Washam.
Uh-huh. So the judge had to put his own son in jail, huh?
Yeah, oh, he put him in jail a number of times.
Oh. Did you, when the transportation system changed in this part of the country and cars started coming in, did that cause any problems for people who were in law enforcement?
No, not really. I saw the first car that ever come to Benton, and it was owned by old man Smith, who originally was from Marshall County but had moved to McCracken County, and he was considered one of the richest men of his time at that time. And they had on these big long white robes, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the women had on big hats with something to tie under the neck to keep them from blowing off. And it was coming down Main Street in Benton, and right in front of John Peterson's store, except across the street, well, we say in the corner of the southwest corner of the courthouse yard was a telephone pole. And this old gentleman evidently intended to turn that corner, and instead of turning the corner, he hit the telephone pole and broke it in two. And that's the first car, as far as I know, that ever come to Benton. Of course, from then on, they began to pick up a little later on, you know.
When did the last horse and buggy? When was that around Benton?
Oh, that was way up in the 30s.
Yeah. In the 30s.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a lot of people come from the country and horse and buggies around in the 30s.
Yeah. What do you think is the reason for Benton being here? A lot of places are built up because of a river. Benton seems to be just it's at a
Well, I don't.
Just at a center.
I really don't think I can answer that question, for the simple reason that there was no particular reason for Benton being here. It just happened, I guess.
It was
just a few people moved in here, and at that time, now, where the courthouse sits, that hill, as best I remember, it was twice as high as it is now. These roads here, they've all been cut down and spread out, so it's not a hilly place like it was at that time. I've seen wagons go down Main Street empty and would be 6 to 8 inches in the mud in the wintertime when after hard rain. 2 horses pulling them, just about all they could do to get them there. People would haul off the tobacco. They'd always go in pairs. In other words, it'd be 2 wagons together. About 3 miles out of town on the south, there's a big hill out there they call Salyer's Hill. And when they get Salyard Hill, why, they'd uncouple a team from a wagon and put 4 horses or mules or whatever they were driving, and then pull over this hill, now uncouple and go back and bring the other wagon over the hill. And at that time, they would stay in Paducah. This Eisman's wagon yard was one of the only places they had in Paducah there for this sort of things for the tobacco men to stay all night. And you could buy beer for a nickel and be about a pint of it, and get a nickel worth of cheese and crackers, and you had a great big meal. For a dime you could eat. And of course, getting 2 and 3 cents for tobacco, you didn't get a whole lot. Nobody had any money back in those days. Everybody calls them the good old days. Well, they might have been good to some people, but in my opinion, we are right now, even though it might be a recession, but I don't think it is. We've got more than we've ever had in all of our lives around here in Marshall County. I've seen in driving out these various roads, Murray, Hardin, Paducah, places, little 2-room houses. They got great big nice brick mansions there now. They when the dam started, it built Marshall County. And at that time, before the dam started, Marshall County was a pauper county of the state, one of the pauper counties of the state. Today, per capita, we're second in the state. And that's something.
Yeah. Do you remember the people in the area of Marshall County who were moved out because of the lake, feeling any resentment about being moved out?
Well, yes, most of them did. At that time, my wife's mother owned approximately 500 acres of land in Johnson Creek Bottom. And of course, we knew sooner or later it was going to have to go. Naturally, we was in a debt. And I sold corn down there. We had a crib down there that was an old big log house, what it was, a log room, maybe 20 by 20. We had it full of corn, and I sold it for 15 cents a bushel, 75 cents a barrel. They hauled it out there.
Do you think that the government paid you as much money as the land was then worth or more when they moved you out?
Well, back during the war, just before I married this girl, May LaFawn, her mother was offered $50,000 for the farm. The government, when they took the farm, gave her $18,000 for it.
And the people had no choice but to sell, did they?
That's all. Of course, now there's a lot of complications in there that I couldn't go into now and tell you the reason, this, that, and the other things there. And but that actually what happened. We got $18,000 for the farm down there. I had a farm in Maple Springs, 90 acres, and I sold it to Mont Edwards, $2,800. And I was called out there to have an auction when Mr. Johnson bought it from Edwards. I was called out and auctioned off their household goods and stuff. And the farm then sold for $14,000. Now then, I would be even afraid to guess the price of the thing. I have a nephew, my wife's brother, boy, who is a teacher over at Murray, teaches criminology. He was a colonel in the United States Army, and his name is John Holloway Fawn. And he would have liked to have bought the place, but I think that the price was so unreasonable. Any of that land in there now brings $1,000 an acre, right close to that.
That's near the lake.
No, it's not too close to the lake.
Where is it?
It's fair dealing.
Yeah.
You know where it is, don't you, Miss Earl?
West of Fair Dealing? Or east of Fairdealing?
East of Fairdealing.
East of Fairdealing.
Mm-hmm. Now the old Maple Springs, it's the old Maple Springs farm. Maple Springs is on that farm.
Mm. Let me ask you a question, something I've written down here that I wanted to come back to. You mentioned that the people in Marshall County ran all the black people out, or well, the night riders in Marshall County ran all the black people out except a man named Boy Ford.
Yeah.
Why was he allowed to stay?
Well, he just didn't bother nobody. He was just a good nigger. Everybody liked him. But he bootlegged all the time, and he was the chief source for getting a bootleg whiskey for anybody around here. Of course, there's a lot of people that belong to the night riders, you might call them, that drank and didn't want to have to go to Paducah to get the liquor, so they'd go down to Boy Ford's and get the liquor.
Where did Boy Ford live?
Down on North Main Street. That was Nigger Town at that time.
About where, is there something there now that you can sort of clue me in and I can say about
I
what?
think that it's right in about where the Dodge agency is, a Dodge car agency is. There's a restaurant there called Beagle's Restaurant. It's just in front of that.
Yeah, okay.
Well, now, at the time these people were down there, from Marshall, from the top of the hill over here at the bank of, well, you might say the Bank of Benton, but it's where the Bank of Benton is now. But it started, there was a sewer across the road, and this little ditch started there. By the time you got down, a block, the ditch had turned into a big ditch, and you could throw any modern automobile in the ditch and you wouldn't see it today. And now that's all been covered up. There's nobody, very few people in Benton that ever saw that.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done gone on.
Yeah.
And I was thinking a day or two ago, just sitting, trying to think of the boys that might have been in the Army with me. I can't. I'm like George Burns said the other day over the television. He said he was always taught when he was a child to respect elderly people and be kind to them and things like that. And he said, "Now, by golly, I don't have to do that. There ain't nobody any older than I am."
That might be true. Let me ask you one other question about the Night Riders' activities in Marshall County. I'm interested in finding out why. Well, you said that Boy Ford was, you said he was a good nigger, that he didn't bother anybody, but surely they didn't run out. I mean, all of the black people who were here didn't bother people. They just ran them out because they were black. Is that right?
Well, mostly they run some of them out, and the others got scared and left.
I see.
That's where that was.
Yeah. Well, most
they
of
run the mean ones out, and then some of the good ones got scared and left.
Yeah. Where did they go?
Most of them went over in Illinois.
Yeah.
Some of them went to Paducah. And Boy Ford also run a little restaurant down there in the north end of Benton and barbecued.
Did he?
And he had, well, he's the only place I ever saw that really had good barbecue. He had the best barbecue of anybody in the country. He made his own barbecue sauce. And when he died, he took his secret with him. He never would tell nobody what he put in that barbecue sauce. But it was good.
He didn't have any sons or daughters, huh?
Oh yeah, he had a bunch of sons.
But they didn't barbecue?
They didn't, no, they didn't fool with him. His wife was named Node, and she done work for the Strauss. These are rich people, you see, and stuff like that. And she, when she wasn't working, well, she'd work in that little restaurant.
Yeah.
And so,
when did that restaurant fold up?
oh, in about somewhere in the early 20s. And
did he barbecue?
Maybe a little later than that. I can't recall exactly.
Do you remember watching him barbecue?
No, I never did see him barbecue.
You never
Nobody.
did see him?
No, he done that. Nobody never did know what that nigger done.
Yeah.
What he done, he just done it on his own. And he had one nigger boy that was can't say what I was going to here, but if you stop that.
Okay.
And then this nigger boy was very mean. He'd been in a lot of trouble, and later on, he was killed over here in Metropolis. Someone killed him. We had two other nigger boys that was from Benton, born in Benton, that worked for Treese Lumber Company down here. Treese owned the first lumber mill that was in Marshall County, and it had a carding mill there where they carded wool, and so pardon me. When they moved out, well, these niggers went over to Metropolis, and both of them were killed. Both of them got their heads cut off in a fight, nigger fight. And when I say heads cut off, I mean literally cut off.
Listen, you mentioned a carding mill.
Yeah.
Was that mule powered?
No.
How was it powered?
I guess it evidently was powered by steam. I don't.
Is that right?
I remember going through the mill, and they'd take, you bring in your wool
Yeah.
in great big bags. Well, they'd dump this wool into a big box, and this needles on this. Did you ever see a carder?
Just cotton, the cotton.
Well, that's practically the same thing as wool. Well, this needles would pick this stuff up and roll it through there. Well, now you had to bring your own grease with you. They had to grease this stuff, and it was greased, and it'd come out and rolled. Oh, I'd say 3 foot long, and an inch or inch and a half around, and it's clean, pretty when it comes through there.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I can't recall too much about the garden mill there because they stopped that pretty soon.
Do you know why people stopped growing wool in this area?
Yeah, that was mostly the cause of it.
When
Stopped growing sheep. It wasn't that long. Way back then, they grew a lot of sheep here,
Yeah.
but they don't do that much anymore. And then they, when they stopped growing, why it didn't pay to
Have a
run the
mill.
garden mill.
Why did they stop growing sheep?
That I don't know.
Okay. And they used to raise a lot more wheat around here too, didn't they?
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
they stopped that.
yeah, they stopped that. I remember the last wheat crop we had in the bottoms. That's the farm I was telling you about in
Yeah.
Johnson Creek.
Yeah.
The old gentleman who's now deceased, Tom Colley, he put the wheat out, and we could not find enough sacks. He had 20 acres of wheat, and we couldn't find enough sacks to sack this wheat up. And we put pasteboard in wagon beds and loaded the wheat up, and then we brought it out from the bottoms back to a farm I owned at Maple Springs, and we put anything we could find down to cover the cracks in the loft to keep the wheat from going through, and put our wheat up there, stored it up there.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd take it to Hardin when we'd want bread, needed flour, we'd take it up there, and they'd take a percentage of it
Yeah.
for grinding the wheat, you see.
Hardin was the mill, huh?
Hardin was the mill, the
Mm.
closest mill to us.
Mm.
And that was all during the horse and buggy days, too.
Yeah.
That 1921, 22. 1922 and 23, I mean.
What did you used to do in Benton and around Benton for entertainment?
Well, we never did have too much entertainment here. After we come back from the war, World War I, why, about every 2 or 3 weeks, why, we'd have a big dance. And boys from Birmingham, which is 12 miles from here at that time, of course, you know Birmingham is no more.
Mm.
It's the middle of the lake now. They'd all come over here. We're very friendly all over the county. We'd come over, we'd all have a big dance and we'd hire a band out of Paducah, string band, cost us $25 maybe, to get the band, 5 pieces come out. And that was pretty big money back along those days, you know. And we enjoyed ourselves that way.
Do you know any names of the bands that you got from Paducah? You remember anything?
Don't have any idea. That's been so long.
Yeah. You remember what sort of instruments they played?
Yeah, they played banjo, guitar, and piano, and horn, and a violin, I believe.
And do you remember where the dances were held around here?
Yeah, right up here on the corner where the Bank of Marshall County is.
What sort of building was that then?
Great big long wooden building, and it had at one time been old man Bud Cross had a printing press there and printed the Marshall County paper there. And I think it's the Marshall County Tribune, I don't remember, but I believe that was the name of it. And I worked a little while for him setting type. And I never did like that job because we had type, there's 26 little squares in the board. A letter in each one of those squares is filled with letters, you see. And then there'd be hyphens, commas, and what have you. And I never could get used to it. I didn't like the work anyhow. So I quit that job. But anyhow, that was our bigger entertainment at that time. Wasn't anything particularly. Now, we did have Chautauqua. And that was a show, traveling show. And I believe that comes through here now, doesn't it, sometimes, Miss Sarah? Didn't you never hear of Chautauqua? Well, Chautauqua was a tent show. And if they didn't have a tent with them, why, then they'd go to the schoolhouse. And it was a vaudeville show is what it was, sleight of hand, and you name it, they had it. Now, it was real entertainment. And very brilliant people on the thing. And that was very good entertainment. And I thought, well, I've seen recently in the paper where that Chautauqua had reorganized, and it was organized in Chautauqua, New York.
Really? Well, there was a Chautauqua that went through Paducah toward the end of May, I think, just this year.
Well, that's probably part of the same thing, or trying to get reorganized.
Yeah. This one went by riverboat, but I guess they just, went from town to town along the river. This one.
Yeah. Well, now we used to have the River Queen and a few of the other boats. I don't remember the names now, but they have big shows at Birmingham, and we'd all go over there in horse and buggies to see that show. And it was very entertaining. Oh, it was something to go see a show like that. Great big boats, and a great big stage on the boat. It's all stage plays.
I'd love to see it now.
Yes, I would too. it would really be something. Uncle Tom's Cabin and things like that was very popular at that time, Of course, I don't remember too much about how many different plays they had. You know the names of the plays and things. As time goes on, your memory slips just a little bit every day.
Yeah.
Forget things. That time, maybe a couple of stores here, something like that.
Now, what time was that? When we talking about Benton?
We're talking about when Benton started. It's way too far back for me.
Yeah.
And
About what year would that have been?
That there was an old gentleman by the name of he was an army man by the name of Benton. Now, I don't know whether it was his first name or last name, but that's where Benton got his name. And then, of course, when we pulled away from Marshall County, they made Benton the county seat. And
pulled away from Callaway County?
It was divided from Callaway County in 1842.
And you were talking earlier about Wadesboro, which used to be the county seat for the two counties combined.
No, it never was the county seat. I don't believe.
Wadesboro wasn't?
No, ma'am. It was just a city outside of Murray. And but it was in in Marshall County, right at the edge of Marshall County.
I thought the old courthouse was at Wadesboro at that time.
No, ma'am. Courthouse never was at Wadesboro. That's Wadesboro. The only thing that's there now is a crossroads, and that's about 2 miles west of Hardin. And it was a very thriving town. It was a bigger town and a better town than Benton for a while. And then how come it ceased to be a town, I don't know. But they did have 2 big tobacco warehouses there. That's where they packed tobacco in hogsheads. And the hogsheads, or a hogshead they'd call them, weighed around from 1,000 to 1,500 pounds. A man would sit on the inside of the hogshead, and then the tobacco would be pitched to him, and he'd put this in rolls, just keep circling. And when he'd get the thing full, then they'd put a prize on top of this thing and prize this tobacco down. Well, you'd get a full hogshead of tobacco and prize it. You'd have it tight enough that you'd only have a half a hogshead. They'd have to make 4 or 5 prizes before they could ever get one of those big hogsheads full of tobacco, you see. And they'd always, the tobacco buyer would come through for tobacco, and the man who was the prizer of the tobacco, or rather owned the tobacco company, he would take a lid or a piece of board off the head of the hogshead and lift out a piece of the tobacco that was in there, maybe 10 or 15 hands, and show the man what kind of tobacco it was. And all the tobacco would go in classes, and say 1, 2, up to 4 classes of tobacco. And maybe they'd get 50 cents a pound for what they call lugs. That is the worst part of the tobacco, which today is the highest priced tobacco on the market. It's made snuff. They make snuff out of it.
I always heard the reason why Wadesboro, people left town was because of the railroad. It came through.
Well,
Hardin.
that's probably one of the
And I think
causes.
they shifted the population to Hardin then. on
Yeah,
account of
that's
the
right. I believe you're right there, Miss Earl.
Do you know why they named Marshall County Marshall County? I mean, why they chose to name it after the Chief Justice?
It was named Marshall County from an Army man too.
Oh, I thought it was named for the Chief Justice. Ex-Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Marshall.
Yes, but I don't think John Marshall was.
It had nothing to do with this area. See, I read that in doing some research about Marshall County. I read that it was named for the ex-Chief Justice of the United States, John Marshall. But then there's no connection in John Marshall's life with this area of the country.
Well, there's no connection as far as I know of John Marshall ever being alive at the time Marshall County was made a county either.
No. But they might have named it in memory of him. But
Well, that's
usually,
possible. It could
yeah.
be done in memory of him, but I don't believe so.
Hmm.
I believe the city of Benton and Marshall County both were named from Army people, Army from here all. And the old colonel that I was trying to tell you about a while ago is old Colonel Walters, W-A-L-T-E-R-S, Walters. And he was in charge of this, we'd say Marshall County, the brigade from Marshall County.
That fought for the Union.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
All right, now during World War One, we had a nigger that lived here. His name was Rutledge, but he had moved to Paducah during that time, and so this nigger decided he wanted to join the army. He went out and got himself 7 other men, because 8 men make a squad. Got 7 other men, and one was the army recruiting officer, and told him, he said, I got some men here, I want to join the army. And they called him Pet Rutledge. And as far as I ever knew, that was the only name he ever had. And his son, Pat Rutledge, now is an undertaker over at Murray's. And so this recruiting officer right there made him a sergeant on the spot. and turned this bunch of niggers over to him and sent them to camp in, well, it was just outside of Cincinnati, across from Cincinnati, where the camp was at that time. So he went on through the war and was wounded, and when he got out of the army and come back, he went to Murray, and he married up there, raised a family, and become a very prominent colored citizen up there. And his son, Pat Rutledge, now is very prominent up there in an undertaker business.
We were talking before about the coffins that your grandfather made, and you told me about finding one small one for a child. And tell the story about that.
Well, when I brought my granddaddy went out of business, he let Morgan and Heath, who was in the undertaking business, and they just sold caskets. He did have a hearse, but there wasn't really undertakers. And when Mr. Hadley Heath died, I bought Heath's box in the store, and on the upstairs, I found a little coffin, homemade coffin that my granddaddy had made somewhere in around late 1860s or early 70s, somewhere. I don't remember the exact date, but anyhow, is solid walnut, finished, sprayed. It looked like one that you would buy today, like a piece of furniture like this is today, the way he'd finished it. So I brought the thing down and put it in my show window over there. And there was an undertaker in Paducah saw it there and tried to buy it for me. I should offer me $100 for it. And my son, at that time, Ronald, he said, "No, Daddy, I don't want to sell that coffin. It's mine. I'm going to bury my dog in it." We had a little dog named Penny, a little Cocker Spaniel. That little Cocker Spaniel's buried in that coffin down there in my backyard, in my garden.
$100 coffin for a dog.
That's a $100 coffin for a dog. Oh, well, this old fire truck we had here, when we have a fire, we had a big bell up here in the courthouse yard, and they'd ring this bell, and you could hear it all over town. And then everybody would run to get his fire truck out. He put about 8 or 9 people a hold of a tongue that had sticks across it. Took about 8 or 9 people to pull this thing. And then you'd go wherever the fire was. If there's a well there, well, we'd drop the hose in the well, and then we'd get on a pump. And that's the way they put out the fires. House generally burned up.
When was that? What time we talking about?
Oh, this is back in the 20s.
Yeah. Why didn't they attach horses to it?
We didn't have enough money to buy a truck big enough to have a horse.
Right, okay.
And back in the same area, I was in Paducah, and I've seen many a fire run down there, and they'd have horses, and they had steam to pump. By the time they kept this lit all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they turned up, I guess they burned oil. They'd turn up get the fire hot, the boiler to going. By the time they'd get to where the fire is, well, then they could pump the water on the fire, you see.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a tank truck at all at that time. I never did see a tank truck. But it was one of the things running down the street with 2 horses just a flying. When that fire bell would go off, these horses were so trained that they could open the door in the stalls, and these horses would walk right under the harness, which was put up over the wagon, a fire truck rather, and they could drop those harness down on them and then start connecting them, buckling the collar and belly band and what have you see, do that. That was really unique.
Yeah. Yeah. You have another one?
Yes, I'm trying to think, the old clock, when it was put there, I was quite a young man back in those days. That's been quite a while ago. We had a Dr. Woodall out here in Marshall County, and then he had a grandson that he made a doctor. And his grandson and I run around together a little bit, and we was out here at schoolhouse out here in Marshall County. And they used to have pie suppers, and you'd go in, a girl would fix a lunch, and the boy would bid on that lunch. They'd say, well, here's Mary Lucy so-and-so's lunch, how much am I offered for it? Well, they, school teacher out here, Dr. Woodall, who later became Dr. Woodall, he and another guy got together and was promoting me and another guy. And we bid $50 on this box. Now that was a terrible lot of money at that time. And what they was doing was taking the money out of a pocket and paying them. They was putting it down in this box here under the counter, and another guy was taking it out of the box and giving it to some other guy to make the bidding. They was using our money and bidding against us all the time.
Whose box were you bidding on? Do you remember?
Yes, I do, and she's deceased now, and she just very recently, and Mr. What was the lady that worked at Morgan's there so long? Lee Davis. Lee Davis's wife is who it was before she married Lee Davis. That's a girl.
Yeah.
Harley Woods was the other guy. Harley Woods was the guy they'd slipping the money to and was making us buy it. I didn't find that out for about 6 months after we bought the cake, as both of us.
You had to pay $50 for a meal, huh?
Yeah, we paid $50. And then didn't get the meal. We never did eat it.
Why not?
I don't know. I don't remember what occurred. I think we was doggone mad about being put on the spot and spending too much money for it.
Yeah.
And that was the people, I think, that put in the clock at one of the boys that was helping to put in the clock there was one that was with me.
Putting the clock at the Marshall County Bank.
Yeah. Now this Marshall County Bank, that old clock is now, my son's an interior decorator too, and he decorated the Bank of Marshall County, and this clock is down in the basement of the Bank of Marshall County now.
Used to be out over the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.